I would look outside and I could see the trees were like glowing with God in them. I felt the loving presence of God beyond anything I could explain to you. It was overwhelming. It was overwhelming, and it lasted for like 2 weeks. I felt like I could see God everywhere I was.
This is Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. Because God is speaking to you and me and the church and the world. And here we get to listen in on the conversations, these collisions of heaven and earth, encounters with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences. I am your host, Trapper Jack. Welcome. I was talking to a buddy of mine. He was talking about this time that he and his wife had joined a bunch of other couples at somebody's home. And the women had kind of gone off into their own room to discuss matters. And among the matters was God. And one of the women had said, you know, if there is a God, he would give us a sign. Boom! All the lights go out. Boom! A second boom. The lights are off. She's just said the words. Everyone's freaking startled, jumping up. They're it's like, what? They're all a little afraid, too, because you said if there's a God, he'd give us a sign, and all the lights go out, and there's the boom and all this kind of stuff. And what does the Bible say? Wisdom begins with fear of the Lord. And this is that healthy kind of fear, you know, you're God, I'm not, that kind of thing. So meanwhile, my buddy, he's looking outside. He's seeing what's going on. He sees the sky light up. He hears the boom, and he goes, Transformer, I've seen that before. The second boom, so he's kind of watching the show. So the women come out in this darkened home now, just still buzzing about this thing. And he says, it's a transformer over there. The whole neighborhood's out. You can see all the lights are out here. So then they start relaxing, of course, and just, smiling and, okay, we're all fine, right? The fear kind of drains away, right? Sign? What sign? Meanwhile, in this analogy, you have the great transformer, God, who never has to transform. He's perfect, right? But he will help us in our transformation, where he wants us to go. And that's what we're talking about today, transformation. So we have three women here, and transformation, little things to big things. Let's just kind of go through these little transformations, these signs that, of redirection and such. We have Kim. We'll start with Kim. This is a small transformation, but not. This has to do with what we listen to every day, what we watch every day, what we read. What are we putting into our heads, right? Can that have an effect on us? We think, I can handle whatever. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe there's some things in our day that just do not serve us in transforming into the person we want to be. So it's a little transformation for Kim from Dallas, Texas.
Hey, Trapper.
Hey, anybody I know?
All right, so I am a crime junkie, right? I love crime podcasts and crime shows, and I just kind of was tired of listening to them. It's depressing. So I said, okay, God, help me find something that is inspiring. And the words touched by heaven came into my mind. So I just typed it in the search on my Spotify, and happened to be that the podcast had
Hold it. You ask... You ask God, I need some, and you actually hear an internal voice giving the whole the name of the podcast.
Correct. Touched by Heaven. So
is this normal for you?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting start. Okay. We all wish we all wish we had that kind of conversation going on.
Things happen like this to me a lot. So yeah.
Things happen to me. Things just happen to me. So
yes.
You in your car right now? Where is you?
No, I'm in my classroom. 6th grade math.
Give us a 6th grade math question. What happens in, I don't remember anymore. 6th grade math. What do you get?
We're doing stem and leaf plots and dot plots and histograms.
Wait, when I go to the store, I look for anti-histograms, when I get stuffed up. But
I know, right?
I'll take your word for it. I'm going to take your word for it. Kim goes on to tell me about how she just kind of comes to know things. There's kind of an infusion of knowledge along the way with this conversation with God, like, yes, you're going to get that job, or, your sister's going to be pregnant, or, those kinds of things that she just goes day to day. It's just always there, this understanding, this knowledge. Thanks, Kim. All right, let's move on to Leah, whose story actually starts out similar. Transformation. She's looking for something bigger.
This is FaceTime audio, so you can't see me?
No.
Oh my gosh. I ran and I brushed my hair and put on makeup and everything because I just knew that.
You've never looked better, Leah. I mean it. Said the blind man. How did you happen to stumble upon the podcast?
I was one of these. I used to be hooked on Dateline and all of these shows that, true crime stories. And I just had enough of that. I just decided that was not serving me well.
So a similar start here, right? What are we listening to? What are we watching? What are we reading? What are we putting into our heads? Has an effect on us all day long. But Leah's looking for something much bigger. Around last Christmas, she's looking for an overhaul. She's looking for God to do something big with her.
It all started with a prayer. It was the day after Christmas. I realized that I couldn't go on living the way I was living. Just a lot of things were just really weighing me down. And I prayed, and I just said, God, will you help me? Will you help me with this? I need to be delivered from a couple of things, some things that don't serve me, some bad habits. A day or two later, I was like, I should really find an uplifting podcast or something like that to listen to. So I started Googling synchronicity. I saw synchronicity, angels, and then Touched by Heaven popped up, and I started listening, and I'm up to episode, I think, 186. And I love all of your listeners. I mean, I really, really do. I mean, I listen to them and I think, well, I'd never had a sit down conversation face to face with Jesus like some of these people, but they are.
He hasn't been in your kitchen? Oh, I'm sorry. You haven't gotten to that episode yet. Sorry.
I can hardly wait.
Yeah.
After finding your podcast and listening to all the stories, it has just really, really inspired me. And it's taught me a lot of things. And in the process of listening to all the stories, it made me reflect on my own stories, recognized to be kind of a supernatural thing. I was in college. My sister and I were in college together. I was a sophomore. She was a senior. I very much looked up to her. She was a superstar. She was, president of the SGA, president of our sorority, all those things. And it was fall of 1989. So this is long before cell phones. Okay. We're on a small college campus in Birmingham, Alabama. And I had the flu. I was in my dorm room. I was sick in bed. I had a fever. I had body aches. I had everything. And she calls me up one afternoon and she says, "Hey, we're in the same sorority, right? And they have intramural football for the girls, for the sorority. It's flag football. It's not tackle football. It's supposed to be flag football, right?" So she calls me up and she says, "Hey, it's the championship game today. We're up against, this sorority here." And she said, it's going to be really contentious, um, because they're very competitive. And I said, "Oh, I can't go. I am so sick." And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." And I said, "That's okay. I'm just going to take a bunch of Tylenol and I'm gonna take a nap." So that's what I did. So I took a couple of Tylenol and I was zonked out. Well, fall asleep, and my phone rings, and I have it on the floor right next to my bed. And so all I had to do was just reach down. And when I picked up the phone, it was it was a male voice, and it sounded like somebody who was roughly our age, maybe slightly older, but a very pleasant, very friendly, very familiar male voice that said, "Hey, you need to come down here to the intramural field. Your sister's been injured." And I said, "Really? Okay, okay." Well, that was okay. So just hold on to that for a minute. That was actually a dream, right? The phone ended up ringing, and it woke me up out of a sleep because I was kind of in that, trying to wake up but couldn't wake up. The phone rings again, but it's ringing in reality this time. I pick it up and I hear the dial tone, and I'm wide awake at this point. I put the phone down, and I felt amazing. The fever was gone, no body aches. I had a burst of energy, and immediately I thought about the game. All I could feel was like, I feel great. And I jumped up out of bed and I put on my shoes and I said, I can still make it. I can still make the last quarter of the game, and it was about a 10 or 15 minute walk down to the intramural field. And so, I was not rushing or anything. I was just walking. I was feeling good. And I was noticing how the campus seemed empty. Well, it's because everybody was at the game. And I get down there, Trapper, and uh, one of the guys, one of the sorority big brothers said to me, "Hey, Leah, get over here. Caroline's just been injured." And it had just happened like 1 minute prior. And, I freaked out. And immediately I remember the phone call that I got. And I said, "Wait, when did this happen?" And he said, "It just happened like a minute ago." And I'm like, "No, wait, who called me? Did you call me?" "I didn't call you. This just happened." Well, I'm like, I got a phone call saying she got injured. I got a phone call. And then I had to stop saying that because people started looking at me. I sounded crazy. And I run up to my sister, and she's fine. She ended up tearing her ACL, and and they tackled her because she was about to make a touchdown, and she was going to make essentially what was the winning touchdown. And the girl on the other team decided that's not going to happen, so she tackled her. When you're not supposed to. It's supposed to be flag football. And so when she tackled her, it tore her ACL, and that's a mess. And so she had a couple of her girlfriends and we all jump into the car and we take her to the hospital. Anyway, and we eventually come home and everything. While we're at the hospital, my fever comes back, my body aches come back. And I told my sister, I said,
Jeez.
hey, I don't know why this happened, but I got this phone call. And then I realized, just stop talking, because they just were looking at me like, and this, I realized this is not a time to make this about me, you know?
Yeah.
So I didn't bring it up again, but I have thought about it, and I told my husband about it. Um, and I have thought about it so many times over the years, and I didn't revisit. I always wondered why, but I really started asking why. God, why?
Yeah.
Because
What is that about? What is that
what is
about?
what is that about?
Because whether you're there or not, someone's going to take her to the hospital, obviously.
Somebody took her to the hospital, took care of her, and as it turned out, you know, two things that has come to mind now. She ended up. I told you she was a superstar. She's had an amazing life. She and her husband, they get to travel everywhere, and because of his job, she lives in Washington D.C. And I only get to see her maybe one or two times a year, and we're not that close. And we never really were that close. And I've always kind of grieved that, you know. But after listening to your podcast and realizing and thinking about it, she called me a couple weeks ago, and I said, "Hey, while I have you on the phone," and she was asking for my advice on something, which flattered me. I said, "Hey, can I ask you something? Do you remember when you hurt your knee and I told you I had that dream?" And she said, "It sounds vaguely familiar." And I said, "Well, let me remind you of the story." And normally she's very busy and she doesn't have time to listen. And, you know, um, she was completely quiet and she let me tell the entire story and she didn't interrupt. And I said, "I've wondered all these years why, why I needed to be there, why, and who was that called me? Was it your guardian angel? Was it my guardian angel? Was it God? And what was?" And I said, "I finally think I figured out why." Because you and I are not like other sisters. We're not best friends. We don't pal around together. There's distance that separates us. But maybe, just maybe, that we have a spiritual connection that's closer. That we really, really are closer than we give ourselves credit for. And she said, "I like that takeaway."
That's nice.
Yeah.
That could be a start for you, sisses.
Well, I think so. I think so. And you know, it was huge because Well, again, we're just not that close, and I really regret that, and I really wish that we
I hear
could
you.
be.
And God is all about family, and He's all about bringing people together that should be together. I know you say that because when I was I guess 18, I left, and just because I jumped immediately into broadcasting, and that involved moving here, there, and so I was away from family. So the best I've ever done, ever, is see my 6 siblings once a year, maybe. Most years not. It's just that's just kind of the way it's been most of the time. So, and yet when we all get together, it's like we've been together every day since birth. There's just that union that I just love. There's just a closeness to this family, even though in my case, I'm just not around them that much, but they've always been really, really close,
Right.
So God bless God, in the sense of putting that there in your past as something that's just tugs on you. It just points to what the podcast is all about, which is all of this is going on all the time. This is just God being God,
But your podcast has been it's been amazing. It has changed my life. I'm happier. My family sees it. My husband sees it. My children see it. And it's the love that I feel. And even on a bad day, today was a bad day, but well, let me give you an example. I was going over to a building where I never go, and there was a receptionist that would see me every day. And on Friday, she stops me and she said, "I just have to tell you." She said, "I don't know you, but you have a light coming from you." And I haven't heard that in a long time.
Made your day, didn't it?
It did. And
Nice.
everybody's noticed. I mean, my preacher, he's a good friend of mine. He sees what's happening and he's just like, what is going on with you?" And we're supposed to meet and have lunch tomorrow because he just, he has to hear the story. But, I left the church. I mean, I quit going to church after my first husband and I split up. And I just left. I lost interest. I lost hope. And but now I'm back, and I'm remarried now. And my husband, I married a Roman Catholic.
That surprised you.
And anyway, he's going along for the ride. He's going to church with me. It's just great, and I'm back. I'm back in the church, and I don't ever want to go away again. I think this is the new normal.
I love it. I love it. Welcome back. This is awesome. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Let's pause right about here. Then more transformation stories coming up here on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. Our Patreon shout out, Teresa Ostendorf. Thanks, Teresa, for joining the Patreon family and keeping this all going week to week.
Oh, thank you for letting me share this. Thank you for letting this venue be available. I love hearing people's stories, and because when life can get so challenging, it's easy to get caught up in that. But hearing those who share their experiences with you and then you share with us, what is it? Reassures?
It reassures, it confirms.
That's it. The word, the confirmation. Yeah. Yes, thank you. When you have something great like this, you just want to share it.
Thanks, Teresa. To join the Patreon family, come here to this episode 319 at touchedbyheaven.net, or just go to patreon.com and search for Trapper Jack. Thank you so much. All right, now on to Joanne, the third of our 3 women, and this talk of transformation and the great transformer and what he can do to wake us up. Talk about signs. We're getting them here today, right? And Joanne certainly has had her signs as well. Isn't this exciting?
It is exciting.
Where do you live?
I live in New Hampshire. I have to thank you for the podcast because it's been such a help for me. I started accidentally. I found you on YouTube about a month and a half ago, and it's been an inspiration. And at the end of every show, you say, if you have a story, call me. And every time I said, oh, I'm not calling him. I have a story, but I'm not calling. And then this week, I happened to be watching a different video, and it said, you can't hold all your stories to yourself. You are to share them. Every time you said it, I was like, well, nah, I'm not going to do it. And then it was kind of confirmation I got it somewhere else. And if you don't use this is fine. But I just thought I'd call anyway and tell you.
Well, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much.
When I was about 14 or 15, I had an experience with Christ, and I can't explain it any other way than that. It was from that point on, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt there was a God.
What happened when you were a teenager?
When I was a teenager, I went to a Catholic retreat. It was, I forget what it was called. It was in Massachusetts. It was a weekend thing. And, they gave talks and prayers and stuff. And after the weekend, I went home and I had an experience where I felt the loving presence of God beyond anything I could explain to you. I felt it in my body. I would look outside and I could see the trees were like glowing with God in them. It was such an experience that I can't explain it much better than that. It was overwhelming. And it lasted for like 2 weeks. That I felt like I could see God everywhere I was.
And you basically brought him home with you.
I brought him home with me. And I think I needed to be quiet to get it.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think that's true. You start reflecting when that's happened with me too. You reflect after you get home.
Right.
And we've talked to a few people while we've had Touched by Heaven that have had this kind of experience where everything is shiny, everything is love, everything is like, where did this come from? It's like, you know, and you never want it to go away. And then, eventually you can't just have, you got to wait for heaven at some point, I guess, or something.
And years later, I just walked away. And I would pray to him every once in a while, mostly when I wanted something. And about 5 years ago, I made some big changes and became sober. I had been a drinker. I became sober. And my life in Christ has just changed. And my life has changed. My view of the world has changed. It's been a great thing. So that's where I am now.
How'd you get away from the alcohol?
That was totally God too. I had something happen, and it was, with alcohol comes a lot of shame, and so and I had gone through all kinds of shame, and nothing stopped me. I quit in the morning, and I get back on it by evening, and I've used every excuse. I'm really happy. I'm sad. I've used it all, and one of my kids said something to me that made me take a step back. And I went to an AA meeting, which are extremely helpful. And it's there. They were talking about God. At one of my meetings, they did St. Francis of Assisi prayer. And I was like, I feel like I'm in church. We do the Our Father at the end of every meeting. It started me back into looking into things. It started, and I couldn't continue. I wouldn't have never been able to get off without God.
Yeah. What did your son or daughter say to you?
My daughter had told me that she was going to limit my time with my grandson. And that just broke my heart. She was absolutely in the right. And later I called and thanked her. Because I don't know how long I'd have kept going. I was in such a hole. It made me see. It didn't matter what else, all the other things that I've done that I should have been, oh God, I've got to stop. That made me stop.
Nobody wants to give up their grandkids.
No. And it also made me look at, what is he seeing? Because when you're drinking all the time, you think you're so cool. Like, they can't tell I'm drunk. I can control this slur. And the fact is you aren't that cool, and you aren't that good at hiding it. And it just made me realize how much I was putting people through, and I had no idea. I think I did, but I didn't want to look at it. And that was my look at it moment.
But then there's this other thing that happened you want to tell me about.
Yeah. About 10 years ago, maybe 12, I was driving down the highway. Now, at this time, I would be considered lost. I knew there was a God because obviously I met him years ago. I knew there was a God, but he was in my distant past. And I'm driving down the highway and I get, you got to slow down. Slow down. And it's a voice I hear in my head and a peace in my heart telling me to slow down. So I do. Slow isn't usually my speed, but I slowed right down. I slowed to 50. The highways go up here around 65. I slowed to 50 and driving down the road, and I get a peace. So I don't feel like, well, I'm in a hurry, and I don't feel like I've got to speed up or what the heck is going on. I just have a peace. Then I go for about 20 minutes, and I get, okay, you can drive the speed limit. And once again, it's in my head, and still have the peace. And I went up to the speed limit. I didn't go over it. And I'm driving down the road. I don't know why this happens. And I don't know if it's all in my head until I come to my exit that I had to take. And as I get there, there is a truck pulling a boat on a trailer. And the truck and the trailer just flipped over on the exit, and the dust was still rising up. If I had been 5 minutes earlier, I'd have been there. And that's it. I guess it was really important for me to tell you because I was not following God at the time, but he loved me anyway. And there are people out there who think they've made one too many mistakes and don't understand he's following them around, going, let me help you out. And I can't say that he's miraculously saved me from a million other things. I've had other things happen that I wish hadn't. But it wasn't because I was worthy, and it wasn't because I was living an honorable life. I wasn't. I was a drunk. And he was still looking out for me. And he's still looking out for people out there who they feel like they made too many mistakes.
That's beautifully said. Because we can sit there in our guilt and think, I'm being punished now, or he doesn't love me anymore, or doesn't love me as much as he used to, or, fill in the blank. And he's God, so that means his love is the same all the time, which is over the top.
Right.
And,
right.
He just waits for us, like he waited for you. It's always there. It just waits for us.
But we're told on every level, on TV, on everywhere, that we are just not worthy. We've made too many mistakes. He won't love you now. He won't take you back. Oh, you're just going to do it again. It's so many times we're told he's done with us, and he's not.
Yeah, he doesn't cancel.
No.
He never cancels. Yeah.
No. He's an awesome God.
And he forgives, unlike the world. The world doesn't forgive, and it cancels, and he doesn't. It's such a beautiful alternative.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes.
Well, this has been lovely, short, sweet, and absolutely lovely, Joanne.
Thank you.
I don't know about you, but I feel better.
Good. I do too.
You said you accidentally found us on YouTube, because we put it on YouTube, not because there's video there, but because it's a great search engine, and a lot of people do find us there.
You actually came up in my feed, and I happened to be I couldn't find anything else to listen to. And you came up in my feed, and I said, oh, I haven't listened to this before. And I listened to it, and I've been listening to it ever since.
Nice.
You've had some podcasts on it. You've had some stuff on there that just comes by at the right time. Hearing things that I need to hear at the time. Things that maybe a direction I need to look into. Maybe a day I should be worshiping God because I'm so wound up and going in another direction. It just has been so helpful for me to hear other people's stories, even though I never wanted to tell mine, to hear other people's stories to know that hope is running everywhere. God is running everywhere.
Thanks, Joanne. Then what's our takeaway?
He's never leaving us. It doesn't matter if we leave him. He doesn't leave us.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
All righty. Anything else?
You can't hold all your stories to yourself. You are to share them.
Thanks, Joanne. I asked all three women what the takeaway was in their own particular story. Leah, takeaway?
You know what? I'm just going to steal one of the one of the things that I heard on your podcast, and that is tell your story, because you never know. Someone needs to hear it. You never know what it is that somebody's going to relate to. You know, I'm convinced that God does these things. He wants us to share. He wants us talking. He wants us laughing. He wants us crying. He wants us part of a community. And that's it.
And Kim, your takeaway?
What is my takeaway? My takeaway is that this is exactly what God wanted. So my takeaway is that we were meant to connect.
I think there's a theme here. You have a story? Let me know here at touchedbyheaven.net. Today's story is about transformation. The great transformer. He'll help. He'll help. We have these big and little boom moments, a reminder of what is it we're putting into our heads on a daily basis. What are we reading, watching, listening to? And then just obviously being aware of those moments where there's God. There's God. And he wants to help us transform into the person we want to be, and more importantly, to the person he wants us to be. What is your story? Let me know here at touchedbyheaven.net. Thanks for your Patreon help. Thanks so much, Teresa.
When you have something great like this, you want to share it.
See you next week here on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack. Certainly not a guy you have to dress up for.
Oh my gosh. I ran and I brushed my hair and put on makeup and everything because I just knew that.